Hello, Tech Pros, episode 248.
Get your calendar out and go down and write a section off a 1 hour block in the next 2 weeks to where you can do nothing but ask yourself, what is my vision story?
Welcome to the podcast where we explore the opportunities, challenges, and anxieties that technical professionals and techpreneurs face when building their career, building their products, and building their business. This show is about the people behind technology and the mindsets and skill sets they developed that led to their success. You can learn more about this podcast and our guests at hellotechpros.com and about overcoming social anxiety at anxietynerd.com. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Scott Beebe. Happy Saturday, Scott.
Happy Saturday to you, man. It's delightful just up I-95 from you, up here on the low country, in the low country of South Carolina.
Well, happy Saturday, neighbor. It is right up the path of the hurricanes, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're up Hurricane Alley up here, and we're a little bit past it, but there's going to be cleanup for quite some time. And it sounds like you had a harrowing adventure when the hurricane came through on a cruise ship to go sit off the coast of Havana, Cuba.
Yeah, it was not harrowing for me because we did a lot of floating and a lot of entertainment things on the boat. So for us, we didn't even have rocky seas because what we did, we had Eastern Caribbean cruise that got diverted to Western Caribbean. And so while Eastern Caribbean and Florida and the East Coast was getting hammered, God bless everybody, man. I feel so bad for everybody who was affected. We were virtually unaffected because we had tours and excursions that were canceled. But other than that, we just kind of floated around in the calm seas off of Havana. I was really, really disappointed that we didn't dock. I was like, hey, man, I thought the laws were open now. We can go see what Cuba's all about. But no, the captain said, no, we couldn't do that. And so we just did a whole lot of floating in circles for several days, and we actually got a bonus day on the ship because Port Canaveral was closed for a while, and when it finally reopened, there were other ships that were closer that got docked and got first priority to unload and load their passengers, and so we got an extra bonus day on the boat. So I don't know. It was kind of cool. No damage to us, so I feel very, very grateful. I moved from the Midwest, moved from Oklahoma to get away from tornadoes, and I don't know. I think I like hurricanes better just because you can see them coming from like days and days and days away.
That's exactly right. And you can get on a cruise ship just outside of where you live and head down to Cuba.
That's right. That's right. It's a win-win-win situation. So Scott Beebe founded and leads the Business on Purpose, a business coaching, training, and strategy group that works to help small business owners and organizational leaders to uncover what they cannot see. Scott is also the host of the Business on Purpose podcast, a weekly podcast where Scott interviews business owners to get their insight on how they are living out their business on purpose. Scott, I love that mission statement there because I know a lot of business owners, a lot of entrepreneurs who started their business because, you know what, I want to make money. Like I'm tired of working for the man. I want to be my own boss. I want to make my own money. And then they get into it, and 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, 30 years down the line, they're miserable. They're absolutely miserable. They don't have any purpose. They're just chasing that paycheck. They're just trying to pay salary for their employees. They're just trying to make rent for, their studio. And I kind of feel bad for them because it's like, dude, instead of working for the man, you're like working for yourself, and yourself is the worst boss you've ever had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It even depresses me to hear you say all that stuff out loud. Yeah. Like when you just walked through, I thought, that does not sound exciting to me at all. And it's been interesting to watch, Chad, as so many people, I think the latest statistics coming out are 25-30% of America are now considered freelancers. And a lot of that, no doubt, is the IT space, and many guys that are coming out of, a lot of corporate setup, and they're going into starting their own shop, whether or not they're going back contract for those companies or they're doing smaller scale work for small to medium sized enterprises. But, it's kind of like physicians. When they came out of med school, they opened a practice and they had, let's say $200,000 worth of medical school expenses. They open this practice, which costs a sizable sum of money, and they start seeing patients. And then they start seeing more patients and more patients. And all of us on the outside are going, oh my goodness, you're a doctor. You've got tons of money. And the doctor's looking at his bank account going, I'm broke. I've got all this money that I owe to all these people. And I'm seeing more and more and more. I used to work for Pfizer. We would see physicians that would see anywhere from 40 to 60 patients a day. Now, Chad,
Wow.
I mean, think about that in raw conversation time. 40 to 60 individual human stories every single day that you've got to go at least give some semblance of care to while you're in there. And a lot of these guys were it's not just barely making ends meet, but they were making decent cash flow money, but it was all the payoff that they had to do. Well, that happens in the IT space as well. Is a lot of folks go to school or they'll dive into the books and learn programming and a variety of other IT disciplines. And then they'll decide to go freelancing themselves, and they get into it and go, wait a second, I've got to do inventory and QuickBooks, and I've got to do fees and licenses, and you got to do all that stuff. And it can get real sobering, like you said, usually in about 3 to 6 months. When you hear a buddy of yours say, hey, did you pay your quarterly federal taxes? And you're like, what's that?
Yeah.
And so it just gets real sobering real fast. And we've seen it all the time.
Okay, so if we're talking to new entrepreneurs here on the show who are just starting their business, or they're about to start their business, or maybe they would love to start their business, but they've been an entrepreneur for a long time saying, you know what, I want desperately to do my own thing, but I have these concerns that Scott is actually bringing up right now. Like, I don't know how to, what's the best way to pay my taxes and budget for that. And I don't know how to price my consulting services or my products because, as I'm adding up, you know what, I got to pay for my software, my licenses, and my computers, and my employees, and my consultants. It adds all up really quick, and it's like, okay, well, what's the right fee? I want to be competitive, but and so there's these overwhelming thoughts that can get stuck in an entrepreneur's head as they're thinking about, do I even want to do this, or does it make sense to just stay working for the boss, stay working for somebody else and not have to deal with all that stuff? What are some of the coaching and consulting that you do in that area?
IT pros are actually very, very well placed to be business owners if they would take their own advice. And so here's what we found. There are 4 major elements that need to take place as you're starting a business. And so, and these are the same 4 that need to take place, by the way, for people who have an established business with good revenues, but they are in what we call the chaos of working in their business and not working on their business. Mm-hmm. And so if you can go ahead and start to do this from the foundation of the business, the headaches long-term will necessarily go down. They're not going to go away. There's always a tension in business. You can't get away from that. It's a great representation of life, quite frankly. And so that's why I think it's such a clarifying exercise is to be a business owner as well. But the reason that IT pros are so well placed for this is because these 4 major sections that need to take place, a lot of it is process based. Well, think about it. If I go, let's say we've got a web developer, for instance, and I go click on a button on my website, all I do as the end user is click on a button. And what I'm leveraging is the tens, hundreds, thousands of hours of code that a web developer professional went in, wrote out, essentially a back-end process, so that when I make one click, all those processes begin to work. It's like the marble going down and hitting the domino, which hits the pan, which hits the shoe, and it opens the door. And so IT pros are necessarily, they've actually got a unique mind to be a business owner because they think in systems and processes. And essentially these 4 big chunks, the first one being you've got to develop your vision, mission, and unique core values. And here's essentially what vision is. You're going to hear me say this later on at the very end when you talk about some kind of parting wisdom. Is Habakkuk, who was a Jewish prophet, had heard this from God. Write the vision down so that those who read it may run. So think about this. You've got an IT pro who's sitting maybe in a cubicle in an office right now working for the man, but making really good money, thinking, maybe I should start my own business. The first piece of wisdom I would give you is before you do anything, take an hour, 2 hours, whatever, sit down by yourself and write out what a snapshot of the future looks like for your business. What do you want your family and freedom to look like in 3 years? What do you want your financials to look like in 3 years? What do you want your product and service to look like? And then you can start to tie those two things together. Wait a second, if I want my product and service to look like this, and I want my financials to look like this, well, then all of a sudden you begin to retro-engineer the pricing aspect of it as well. And so that begins to emerge, all because you're laying down a snapshot, a detailed snapshot of what you want the future to look like. Then you can start writing down, what type of clients do I want to work? Anybody with a pulse, or do I want to work with people who are uniquely aligned with who I am and what I do? And then you start talking about the kind of culture that you want to build within the firm that you want to establish as well. So that's the first thing that I would say to do, is you've got to sit down and write out not just a statement. Some people will say vision statement. I actually don't prescribe to a vision statement. I prescribe to a vision story and a mission statement. So your vision story is an incredibly detailed snapshot of what you want the world in your business to look like in the next 3 years or 5 years or 18 months or whatever the term is. And then the mission statement is simply a memorizable, portable snapshot of your vision story. In fact, I require them to be less than 15 words. But your vision story are usually going to be like 2 to 3 to 4 pages because there's so many detail there. But it gives you a snapshot of where you can begin to run. Because if you start building a business and you don't know where you're going, there's another proverb that says, where there is no vision, people perish. And I've seen it over and over and over again. And the reason that small business is, they've got graveyards all over the world, is because usually the business owner did not articulate their vision. But those who articulate their vision, the success rate goes through the roof.
Yeah, I think that step is absolutely critical. Honestly, for me, Scott, that is a step that is being refactored currently today, like as we're recording this, because when I started my business, when I started Hello Tech Pros LLC, back in February or March of 2016, it was it was a lot of, I just need to get started. And I've been thinking about things and writing things down for years, and I never actually took a step to start something. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to start today, and it's going to start with a podcast. And here's the 7 episodes that we're going to do every week, and we'll just make it up as we go, right? And that was okay for a while. But making it up as you go for a while doesn't pay the bills in the long term, and it doesn't help you reach the levels of success that I personally want to achieve in this business. So now it's the time where in the last few weeks I've been refactoring that mission statement. I've been refactoring that vision story and what are those core values, because now after running this business for the last 6-8 months, I know a lot more about me and what my vision really is than I did at the beginning. And to me, it's okay. It's okay because I got started at the beginning. I didn't have that clear picture. If I did, I would have been much, much further ahead. But even if someone who's listening to this podcast today saying, you know what, I started my business 2 years ago, is it too late? I would say, no, it's not too late. Go ahead and start refactoring this vision statement, this vision story right now today.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard the old phrase, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago, second best time's today. So you always want, but here's the thing, is I always chuckled when we were about, 5-10 years into marriage, and we were doing some premarital counseling for people. They would always tell us, God, we just can't wait when we're married and we're going to have more free time.
Nope.
You were clueless. Nope. Then, hey, we just can't wait till we have kids because then we'll all be at home and we'll just
nope.
And you're just like, oh my goodness. I mean, they're just heading for a wall. And the same thing is with small business owners. Well, I don't have time right now while I'm starting my business to do that, but probably, a year or two in when I've got more clarity, then I'll write it down. Absolutely not. You will be more muddied in your mind in 2 years, and B, you're going to have no time to sit down and write it down. I hear it all the time, which is why, frankly, people hire me, is because I force them to sit down and take the time and hold them accountable to make them write that. If they would have done it on their own, they would have done it, at the very beginning. You want to start this process right out of the gate because it's going to give you so much clarity and frankly save you so much time and money on the long run in not doing things that really don't fit the overall snapshot of where you want to go. And you mentioned core values. One of the things that we also really prescribe to is what we call unique core values. So there's standard core values like integrity, humility, respect, communication, et cetera. But those are things, quite frankly, that's like the low barrier to entry to the human race. If you and I aren't sharing those things, we frankly just don't need to do business together. What I want to know is what's unique to you that may not be unique to me. So for instance, I've got a client, they just recently came up with a great unique core value, and that value is clutch performance. And it's a great core value because it really ties into their personality. But here's the unique part, Chad. I don't value clutch performance. Like the idea of last second shots to me make me want to be nauseated. I don't like that. I want to win the game in the second and third quarter. I'm not interested in winning the game on the last second drive. But for some people who are highly competitive, high drivers, et cetera, they love that stuff. And so this is something that he values, but I don't necessarily value. And what you can use those unique core values for is a scapegoat for decision making. So, somebody comes to you and says, hey, we want you to do this for us. You can then take that request back to your unique core values and say, hey, man, listen, I'd really like to do this for you. In fact, I want to do this for you. The problem is my core values won't allow me to do this for you. And so I have to decline this offer right now. All of a sudden, you've taken kind of the personal emotion out of it, and you've put it on this impersonal set of words that you identify with. And so now it's the core values fault and not your fault. It's a great way, it's a very stable way to go about in decision making for a small business.
Awesome. I love that. Have unique core values. We talk so many times about those. Integrity, communication, right? As you said, like everybody should prescribe to those. Like there should just be a checklist. Yes, 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 yes. What is your unique? That's going to make me think about it. I'm going to have to take this one offline and really think about my unique core values and what Hello Tech Pros is all about. So you mentioned that there are 4 main sections, and I feel like we just dive into one really big one, which was that mission statement, the vision story, the core values. What's another one that's really important to take a look at when you're first starting your business?
So the second and third, the second actually kind of goes in with the first that we talked about, and this is really building out foundational content for your business. This is the if you went, back in the day when we'd go to the library, for instance, there was always this reference section. It was just like this hallowed ground that you couldn't walk through. There was these special gates, that you had to go through, and the like ultra high security librarian that was standing there, that if you even dared walk towards the gate with one of those hallowed reference books, they would glare at you. And so I always wondered what those reference books were. Because I didn't spend a whole lot of time in that section of the library, let alone the library in general. But what I have come to find out through the vision, mission, values stage is those are really foundational reference tools for decision making moving forward. It's not something that you're necessarily going to look at every day. The mission and the values maybe, but not necessarily the vision story. The second section is more foundational content. There are 3 roadmaps that we build. One is what we call the implementation roadmap, and that really is the roadmap giving you turn-by-turn directions on how you're going to implement the vision, mission, values. So, Chad, a lot of people will actually write those down, but they'll sit in really, really nice binders on a bookshelf for the rest of their existence. And what we want to make sure people do is they actually implement those vision, mission, values. So that's what an implementation roadmap does. The systems roadmap actually gives the business owner for the first time in their business life a snapshot of kind of an autopsy of their business. It shows them the exact systems that exist in their business so that they can process those systems out. And if they can begin to work those systems, now all of a sudden they're working on their business and not in their business. And then the final roadmap in that second stage is what we call the delegation roadmap. One of the hardest, most challenging tasks for a business owner obviously is to let go, as is evidenced by phrases such as, I can just do this easier myself. Or it's just easier if I do it myself and not pay somebody to do it faster, et cetera. That is like cancer to a business, honestly, because the business owner keeps responding that way. A, they're not going to leverage the power of other people, and B, they're going to burn themselves out. And so we have them walk through a pretty intense level of delegation, of writing out every single thing that they do in their business, in their role right now as the business owner, and to begin to work through a process of delegating that stuff out. And so once we've got that foundation of vision, mission, values in these 3 roadmaps, that's when we can move into that third stage and really begin to build out, or if a business is already going, to rebuild from the ground up the entire infrastructure. And we do it all in the cloud, leveraging Google Drive or whatever software, cloud-based software they use. They could use Basecamp or Asana or whatever. And so we build this out to where we go back to the old school framework of an org chart, job roles, meeting agendas, and processes. And you look at that and go, well, that's not very novel. Well, it is novel in the setting, A, you're doing it in a cloud-based setup, and I'll explain why that's important. And the second is in that you're doing it in such a way that your vision demands and not that typical business principles demand. So I tell people, hey, when you go look for an org chart set up for your business, don't go Google it. When you go look for a job role for a bookkeeper, don't Google it. I want to know, what does the organizational setup look like as it relates to your vision? So your org chart, your job roles are actually going to look relatively different than even another person who runs an IT business, because they're going to be unique to your vision. And so you could have 5 IT small suite businesses lined up side by side. They're all doing $500,000 or $1 million in revenue every year. And I would tell you that they're not competitors based on their visions. What they are is they're in the same industry, but they're not competitors because their vision actually has them, and their process, the way they're set up, actually has them doing business in a very, very different way. And so that's the power of vision once it can begin to influence the organizational setup and how you actually build out those job roles. But even if you're a one-man shop, you still need job roles and you still need an organizational layout. You're going to run the business as if you've got 20 people working in-house. You just happen to be doing all those roles right now.
Yeah, I love this aspect of the conversation, Scott, because I've talked to so many technical professionals over my career, over launching this business, that when we talk about systems roadmaps, I think there's so many tech pros out there, especially on the entrepreneurship side, who are thinking about starting their own business, that get way down onto the minutia detail of the systems roadmap. And they're talking about, like, the correct programming languages to use in certain situations, like how they're going to scale their application to bazillions of users once it gets to a certain size and all this kind of stuff. And they're not thinking about the systems that are going to help you grow your business. Like, as you said, what are the org charts? What are, the HR policies? What are the communication mechanisms between different teams or between different team members, right? The decision-making matrices, right, on who makes the call in different circumstances. And these types of systems are absolutely critical to making your business successful, making your business grow. And there's a lot of times where the tech pros get really deep in worrying about the actual technology, like the nuts and bolts of the technology, and not on the operations side of the business and how you're going to make all of these people who are in the business like work together.
We've got some home building clients down where we live, and they're all competitors down here. And I had one of my clients ask me one time, he said, hey, is it a conflict of interest that you work with these other home builders? And I said, totally understand the question, makes sense, and you need to ask the question. This was before they brought us on board. I said, you need to understand something about home builders. I could drive through Palmetto Bluff, which is one of these 5-star neighborhoods with $1 million to $4 million homes in it, and all of these builders build in there. I could drive through here, and I, with my untrained eye, look at these homes and go, oh my goodness, these are gorgeous. I mean, they're just all gorgeous, every one of them. But without a sign in place, I have no idea who built them. And so, as strange as this sounds, $1 million to $4 million homes are actually commodities, right? They're coffee beans. You line up 10 jars of coffee beans, and I wouldn't be able to tell you the difference. They're coffee beans. They smell really good, probably taste really good if I was really into coffee. But when I drive by these houses, I'm not looking at the house. I'm looking at the process that it took to build the house. And I'm looking at the implementation of that process it took to build the house. I'm not going to go through with a fine-tooth comb and be able to look at how the interwiring within the studs is. I can't see it. It's behind the walls. I'm trusting that you did it to a quality level enough to where the overall outcome of the house, where I can wake up in the morning, tomorrow, Sunday morning, and turn on the lights, and the lights come on, and they come on predictably and reliably for the next 200 years. That's what I'm trusting. And so as a small business owner, you're not selling your end product. What you're selling is the process to get there. And by selling the process to get there, if you make it so drilled down, Chad, to your point earlier, if you make it so drilled down that the common layman like me can't understand it, then I'm not interested in your process. I need you to speak to me the way I need you to speak to me the way I want to be spoken with as the customer. I know it sounds entirely selfish, but it's a reality. And so part of building a business, especially in the IT space, is learning the customer language and learning well, take me. I'm not an IT guy. So learning what I need in an IT space. And so we've had to do websites, and we've had to do Facebook ads. We've had to do all this back end stuff that we've had to build kind of from scratch. Well, I need it in layman's terms. And so when you're looking to build a business, you need to be able to kind of dumb it down and even dumb your process down to the lowest common denominator so that you can begin to delegate that process. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest advantages of being in the IT space and actually drawing out process is leveraging some of the coolest little cheapest software tools like ScreenFlow, Camtasia, Screencast-O-Matic, where literally you can just click record on your computer, and anything you do on your computer, it's recording it. And you just upload it to YouTube or Vimeo or Google Drive, and now you've got a library of tutorials so that when you outsource or hire or 1099 whoever you want to help do your process, all your training is right there, and it took you no extra time because you just hit the record button whenever you did that project the next time. So yeah, you don't have to go overboard in processing. You just have to have the processes there, and then you can begin to delegate to other people. But here's the other big challenge, Chad, is you've got to delegate when you feel comfortable that somebody else can do it about 80% as well as you can. That other 20% deficit, you got to let it go. And that's a hard thing to do as a business owner when your name's on the shop.
It's a hard thing to do for tech pros as well as business owners, right? Because seriously, we are some of the most competitive, some of the most thoughtful, some of the most introspective, and just proud people out there, right? Are people who really, really do a lot of study to make decisions on whether to go right or left or cut the green wire or the red wire, right? And we don't want to outsource that because there's a lack of trust involved. It's like, hey, I don't know that anybody else can get to this 80% level. But you know what? If you're going to try to hit that CEO level, if you're going to try to run a business, you got to put faith in your team, and you got to build your team that's going to make those decisions. As you said at the beginning, they're going to follow the core mission and vision of the company, and they're going to have those that decision making culture just like built into the organization because of the way that you've built that vision story and those core values. So Scott, in just a moment, I want to talk to you about like the last major section that you do. We talked about the 4 major sections, and we've covered 3 of them. Let's cover the last one in just a moment, but first we'll take a quick break and thank our sponsors. This episode of Hello Tech Pros is sponsored by you, the audience. Instead of looking for new corporate sponsors, I've decided to adopt a pay-per-value model. What that means is you decide on how much I get paid. If you're just browsing and have yet to get value out of the show, don't feel obligated to pay a darn thing. However, if this podcast does its intended job of helping you build your career, build your products, or build your business, consider becoming a sponsor on Patreon. Pick the level of recurring donation that matches the level of value you get out of this show, or make a one-time sponsorship for that big aha moment that have helped turn things around for you. Become a sponsor today at patreon.com/hellotechpros or visit hellotechpros.com/sponsor. Okay, we're back with Scott Beebe. Scott founded and leads the Business on Purpose business, which coaches and trains and strategizes with entrepreneurs about, you know, what are the 4 major sections that you're missing out on when you're launching your business? Like the things that you're not seeing. You're thinking about the code. You're thinking about the product. You're thinking about the app and the website, right, as technical professionals. But what are the things that you're not thinking about? And so developing that mission statement, that vision story, those core values, building the 3 roadmaps, your implementation roadmap, your systems roadmap, your delegation roadmap, building out the infrastructure for your company. And when I say infrastructure, I don't necessarily mean is it on AWS or is it on Google, right? I'm talking about like the org charts, right? And the customer language and the communication. Like how is the business actually being run? So Scott, great information there. What's the final thing that we need to worry about as entrepreneurs?
You know, it's crazy. I've got a guy, Joe Callaway, wrote a book, great book called Magnetic, and interviewed him for our podcast. And he gave this great quote, and he gives it in the book as well. He said, vision without implementation is hallucination. The final stage of what we've got to get the business owner off to and launch them off the runway is implementation and process building. And so, or we call it implementation and accountability, but a large part of that is the actual process. So notice in those 4 steps, we never started building process until the last step. All of it up until this point has been foundational. So you've got the detailed snapshot of where you're going in X number of years through your vision, your mission, your core values. Then you've got the foundational roadmaps, turn-by-turn directions on how to get to that destination. Then you've got the organizational rebuild. And so if you do it in the cloud, what you can do is you can actually create your org chart, say in a Google drawing, and then every one of your job roles just link to the org chart. So literally you can see your entire business from one sheet of paper, and you are never more than 2 clicks away from any given process within your business, because all you have to do is click on the box in the org chart to get to your job role. Once you're in the job role, every line within your job role now has a hyperlink to it to the individual process, whether it be a tutorial video or a written document. So you're literally never more than 2 clicks away from any minute process within your business. And from one sheet of paper, you can see your whole business. Once you get to that stage, that's when you can start populating those processes. And you think, well, what process do I need to populate? Well, you just go back to your job roles. And you say, well, what job roles do I need to write? Well, you just go back to your org chart. Well, what needs to populate to my org chart? Well, you just go back to your systems map, because that tells you what systems are in your business. Well, what systems do I have in my business? Well, you just go back to your vision story. And so it all connects all the way down. And so we've actually got a system for team meetings. Chad, it's funny. The 2 most priority pieces of the entire 4 steps framework are number 1, your vision story, and number 2, your meetings structure. Now, usually I get a little cocked head about that, because here's why. If Hurricane Matthew were to come back, which, golly, I thought it might there for a while, actually come back, back when it hit. If it were to come back and tear everything down, if it tore your business down, I would ask you 2 questions. Number 1, do you still have a snapshot of where you want your business to go? And if your answer to me was yes, I'd say, okay, good. Second question, do you still have a means of communication with your team, whether they're full-time, contract, around the world, local, I don't care. But do you still have a means of communicating that vision with the team? And if your answer to me was yes, I would say then fine. Don't worry about anything else. If it was all demolished and torn up, we can rebuild everything as long as you know where you're going and you have a means to communicate that. And so your team meeting structure, I actually recommend 4 different types of team meetings in any given business, even if you're a solopreneur, by the way. These team meetings happen on a level frequency, and every team meeting has to have a driven agenda to it. And when you have that in place, now what you can do is you can take those 3 roadmaps, you put them in a line item as your agenda. You're meeting on a regular basis, so you're constantly revisiting your turn-by-turn directions, which then points you right back to your vision story. So it's all connected. And then we create within that an accountability structure. And so we've just got a simple action item sheet. It looks like a whiteboard in an Excel spreadsheet. And so for all of you IT folks, if you were to look at my back-end stuff, you would be embarrassed. But I'm not looking for rocket science. What I'm looking for is functionality and implementation. I want to know, can we go get done what our value proposition says and our vision story says we're going to get done? And so I'm less concerned about the lipstick on the pig, and I'm more concerned about the pig itself. All right. And so once we've got this meeting structure set up where we can embed everything in there for accountability, now we can start building process. Because with our meetings, let's imagine, Chad, you and I met every Monday morning. Well, in our meetings on Monday morning, we would have our agenda. We'd start walking through that. And then all of a sudden I go, hey, Chad, this past week, I had an idea. What if we started sending SMS text reminders to our weekly clients to remind them instead of just email? Because sometimes email goes to spam and they miss it, but a text will go straight to their phone. And Chad, you'd go, that's a great idea. Let's do it. All right, that's the trigger point right there. If you miss that moment, you miss the systems mindset. What the systems mindset is, this next thing that I'm about to do, and in this case, it would be send an SMS text or to a client for our upcoming meeting. The next time you do that, document it, and then come back to the team meeting next week, train the entire team on it, and install it as a formal process into the business, and ensure that it gets into the hands of somebody who's going to replicate that process every week. So if you've got a vision story and you know where you're going, you've got a team meeting set up, so you've got a means of communication, and then you've got the systems mindset in your mind that says, all right, when somebody comes out with a, quote, new idea, that is a new process. And we either need to decide based on our core values that this fits, and if it doesn't, we throw it away. If it does, it goes down on our action item sheet, And somebody is responsible, and we write that down on our action item sheet, for the creation and the implementation of that process. And then the following week, they come back and train us all on it. So it's kind of this perfect cycle of making sure that what gets detailed out in the vision story actually gets implemented at the baseline level of everyday life within the business.
Yeah, man, we want it to flow, right? We want it to flow from the CEO, the founders of the business, the board of directors who are making the decisions, making the big high level strategy stuff, that those actually get implemented to the at the individual contributor level, where the individual contributors are like boots on the ground, like hands in the air, actually making it happen, making the stuff happen. So it's all about making that communication flow.
No doubt. And it's one of the hardest things to do in business. A lot of people say, I would love being a small business owner if it wasn't for the people. And so just a heads up, that's a real challenge. If you're looking to get into your own business, that's you kind of have to have that. And of all the business owners we worked with, we survey them on a regular basis. The number one headache is employees. And I'm telling you, you can go ahead and head that off at the pass right now if you begin to implement your vision stories and lay that out through a series of team meetings and hold each other accountable through that. It is a very, very powerful mechanism. And it was a guy who used to be the CEO of 1-800-GOT-JUNK, just recently wrote a book called Meetings Suck. And I would say that I would agree with him to some extent. I would say that the meetings that you're used to, bad meetings, suck. It's the meetings that are driven with a purpose and agenda and that follow a very tight flow and accountability. Those meetings, they will absolutely propel a business towards the vision story.
Scott, before we go, can you share any parting words of wisdom that you have for our audience, the best way that we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye?
Sounds great. Yeah, I think the parting wisdom would be to get your calendars out right now. If it's a paper calendar, a Google calendar, iCal, like literally right now, get your calendar out and go down and write a section off a 1-hour block in the next 2 weeks to where you can do nothing but ask yourself, what is my vision story? And you can do it in this framework. What's the term of my vision story? Again, is it 18 months, 2 years, 5 years, whatever? The second thing is, what do I want my family and freedom to look like when that's up, when that snapshot comes to fruition? What do I want my business financials to look like? What do I want my product and service to look like? What do I want my client to look like? And what do I want the culture of this small business to look like? If you can just answer those, you will be so far down the road in 1 hour of invested time. And that would be the best part of parting advice, is to go back to that prophet Habakkuk, who heard, write the vision down so that those who read it may run. If you want to run towards something that's beyond where you're at today, if you want your family or a team to run beyond that, then write the vision down. So go ahead and block off an hour and follow that template.
Scott, thank you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros today. I really value this roadmap, this process that you've put in place, because I think there's a lot of technical professionals that either want to start their business or have already started it and are like, oh my God, what did I get into? Because you know what? There's a lot of us who are naturally not people persons, right? We are technical people. We are engineers. We can think about the process. We can think about the systems, but when it comes down to actually implementing systems in a way that flows and communicates between the team members and gets everybody in alignment, where it's not just constantly fighting and having arguments and having to come back to, well, all right, we got to do what Scott says because he's the boss, and everything, all these decisions are constantly flooding up to, well, let's go back and ask Scott. If we lay it out in this framework that you've laid out for us, if we design everything from the ground up the way that you showed us, I think it's going to make things a lot easier in the long run. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us today.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. It's and we've actually got a free video series if anybody's interested. If you go to mybusinessonpurpose.com, there on the front page, we've got a 5 module video training series where we just walk you through those 4 steps and even show you behind the scenes. We've been called the Wizard of Oz of small business before because we love to go into detail about how you build these job roles and things like that. And so that is completely free. If for whatever reason it's still not up on the website, you can go to 4stepstobusinessfreedom.com. That's all spelled out. But start at mybusinessonpurpose.com and check that out there.
And where can we get a hold of you?
That would be the best place is mybusinessonpurpose.com. And while you're up there, click the podcast button. We've got the Business on Purpose podcast where we get to interview small business owners who are looking to integrate their faith in their work. And some real interesting conversations that we've had over the last couple of years around that.
Cool. Thanks so much. Tech Pros, if you are in this position where you are starting your business or you're thinking about starting your business, you know what? You're probably, like me at the very beginning, thinking about what kind of app do I need to build? What kind of website do I need to build? What kind of systems do I need to put in place, meaning technical systems? It's all about the people. It's all about the customers that you're going to connect to. It's all about the people who are going to help you deliver that vision and mission that is in your head and why you're getting this. And so even if you feel uncomfortable, like I am uncomfortable dealing with people, I'm not a people person, I'm an engineer, but I don't want to work for somebody else. I want to have my own thing. There are easier ways to go about it. And if you follow a process like Scott has laid out here of really get in touch and writing it down what that vision is so that you can communicate it, you can hand that document off to somebody else and they can help foster and get your business further down the path of actually seeing that vision come to reality, the better off you'll be. But it's all about people and it's all about communication. You've been listening to Scott Beebe, and I'm Chad Bostic. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/248. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If this episode helped you out in any way, please leave a review on iTunes and let me know what you thought. iTunes reviews helps our rankings, which helps us grow the Hello Tech Pros podcast to a broader audience, which helps more technical professionals and techpreneurs build their career, build their products, and build their businesses. If you are a subscriber and get repeat value out of this show, consider becoming a sponsor on Patreon. The information on this podcast is free to everyone, but I'm giving you the opportunity to pay for the value you get out of it, starting as little as $1 a month. Pledge your support today at patreon.com/hellotechpros or visit hellotechpros.com/sponsor.